And hello again, and here we are back in my workshop, and I'm working on this particular bracket here. This is a one-off bracket made to hold a headlamp for my mate Tim's XL Sportster sort of scrambler project, and my job here is to polish it because he can't be bothered and I do owe him quite a big favour. So I got the job of getting this thing nice and shiny before it goes back on the bike, and I thought what I'd do today is go through the process by which we get to that point. And what I'm trying to do is to remove all these deep gouges and scratches here and here and here, which have been left by the process of making it. Now, to do that, we need to use wet and dry sandpaper, of which I've got quite a big variety here. And we start off with quite a rough wet and dry, maybe something like 240 here. And that will get rid of all these deep gouges. But it would leave behind even more scratches, but obviously not quite as deep. So then to get rid of those, we move on to say a 400 or even 600 grade wet and dry sandpaper, which will slowly remove those deep scratches left by the 240. And finally we'll get to a point where all these little scratches and gouges and nicks have all been removed, both sides of course, back and front. And when we get to that point and it's all nice and smooth, that's when we move on to the second phase, which is to use a polishing mop. And so we'll start off by trying to get rid of these deep gouges that are in this area here. Now, I'll be using a wooden block because that makes life a lot easier on your fingers when you're rubbing away for hours on end. So here we go. Now, I'm going to try and go this way rather than that way because that will help smooth out those grooves a lot quicker. So here we go. Okay, so about 5 minutes have gone by and I seem to have got rid of all those deep gouges that were in this area here. That's using 240 grade wet and dry sandpaper. And now I've got to repeat that whole process over the whole piece. I mean, there's deep marks here and down there and on the back. You can see here with the engineer's ink has still been left on here. It shows off all those scratches quite well, which I'm now going to get rid of using the same process. So come back in an hour or two and this should look a lot better. So I'll see you then. Oh, and one little tip, when you're using this wet and dry sandpaper, don't just use a whole sheet and wrap it around your wooden block or rip it up by hand. Instead, use a pair of scissors and cut it up into neat little squares. That way it'll last an awful lot longer and you can cut up little squares to match the size of your rubbing block, which means this stuff's going to last an awful lot longer. And so now, after an hour or so hard work with wet and dry sandpaper, I'm here now hopefully finishing off using good old Autosol metal polish. But having spent about half an hour polishing away with this stuff, it's pretty good actually, it works quite well. A little dab, you don't need very much, and then rub away for what seems like hours and hours and hours, and it just brings up a good shine, as you can see. But sadly it's not quite there yet. I didn't do quite a good enough job with the wet and dry sandpaper. There are still some very fine scratches on here, which can be seen if you look close enough once I finish polishing away. So yeah, it's not bad, but I would really like to have something a bit better. So since I've also got to do some more polishing on alloy like this, hopefully you can see that close up. This is the battery box off my Harley that needs to be repolished, so I've got that and a couple of other small pieces to do. So what I'm going to do now is stop, and rather than spending another, I don't know, hours and hours and hours on this thing, and so instead I'm going to take these pieces over to my mate's workshop where he's got a polishing mop, and that should give me a really good finish and be a lot quicker. Keep me happy. Okay, so here's the piece I've been working on, and it's okay but not really good enough yet. Hopefully this thing will get me a really good finish on this, so let's see. Start with the easy stuff, just do the edges. One thing I've got to be careful of is this here doesn't catch on here because it will send it into a bloody orbit if it does. You can't hold on to it, it's far too powerful. So be careful when using the polishing mop. You're also going to work down here so that if you slip it goes down rather than up. You don't want it shooting up and smashing you in the face. An old guy who had that happen to him and lost a few teeth. So yeah, be so careful. I can't tell yet, but that is an improvement, and just keep on working on it. So come back when I'm finished. Okay, so that's those two done. They're still covered in polishing soap, so they don't look their best yet, but once I get them home I can clean them up and give it a final polish, and hopefully that's that. And now here we are again back home, and I finished working on this piece at last. And it looks pretty damn good, I think. It's getting quite late now, so the light isn't ideal, but hopefully you can see that's now got a decent shine on it at last. And it took around 3 hours of work to get to that point. Now I did use a polishing mop, which most folks probably don't have, but you don't need to do that. That just speeds up the whole process. If I didn't have a polishing mop, I'd just carry on with my wet and dry sandpaper and use finer and finer and finer grades, maybe down to 800 or even 1000 grade wet and dry. And once I got a good finish there, I could then carry on with the good old Autosol here, or any other sort of decent metal polish, to get you that final finish. So yeah, overall it's quite easy to do, it just takes a lot of time. So anyway, thanks for watching and cheers.